Okay, so this is our first lesson in FormIt, and I'm going to start off a little bit different. Rather than going through sort of step by step what the entire interface is doing, we're just going to learn this nifty little piece of software here, which is growing into something much more than a nifty little piece of software, by launching a project and walking through sort of the necessary things you're going to need to know to get rolling on a project. So right away, you'll notice XYZ Cartesian coordinate system 0, 0, 0 right in the middle. With a wheel mouse, I'm going to zoom in and zoom out. I can shift middle mouse to orbit. I can also use the right button to orbit, but if you're familiar with Revit or AutoCAD or Max or anything else, that will feel really familiar, that shift wheel. Zoom in, zoom out, and then hold the middle mouse or the wheel, and that will give me a pan. And that's about all the interface we need to know to begin with. So if we're starting a project, which is really what FormIt is all about, conceptual design, even down to that sort of when we're still working on the building program level kind of thinking. First thing that we really need is a site. So I'm going to click Set Location, or we can come right over here to the little drop thing that you're familiar with in terms of Google Sites. And we are going to do the Missouri Institute of Natural Science as our project. So let's actually pull that website up really quick, and we'll copy and paste the address. Let's bring that right across. Address 2327 West Farm Road 190. We'll paste that address right into the search box here. Enter. And I am going to select what I think is going to be the most relevant weather station. Again, this weather station happens to be along a similar valley that our site is located within. So I think the microclimate data is going to match up a little bit better, a little more precisely. So we'll use this particular weather station. I'm going to click on that. You'll notice right over here some really important data that's showing up. First of all, monthly temperatures, and really relevant are my wind roses that are showing up. I definitely want to remember and be able to capture this data and use it later. Really, really useful information, and it's breaking it down and showing me the wind roses per month, or in particular through specific temperature swings. In this location, the Midwest, summer winds June through August, completely different than what we're seeing in the winter. So really important data that we're seeing from that. We're going to zoom in a little bit further and click Import Satellite Image. And then I'm going to use my wheel again to zoom out and capture the bulk of the site that I need. So my primary building site is going to be inside of this tree line right here. So I'm going to go ahead and say Finish Importing. And that's going to bring my site in. Next thing that I'm going to do is I already have a conceptual sketch, a very rough, in fact quite terrible napkin sketch. So again, if you're not working in the profession very much yet, you know, this is a lot of times the way a project is going to begin. So this is a pavilion for a Tyrannosaurus Rex at the Missouri Institute of Natural Science. Plan view, so you can see the T-Rex feet, sort of where the body is coming, how we want to enter the space, a stair to an upper level observation and additional exhibits. And I know that this is going to sit on the site. It's going to be somewhat bigger than a T-Rex. I know from a little bit of simple research, this is from National Geographic, a source I should perhaps trust better than the Wikipedia, that a T-Rex is about 40 feet long, 15 to 20 feet tall, and it compares like this to a bus. So, you know, it's larger than a bus, so that's pretty exciting. Gotta love National Geographic. Thanks. So I'm going to import this as a base point. Even though it's incredibly rough, I'm going to import this as a base point to start building a 3D model inside of FormIt. So to do that, I'm going to use my import button right here, import image. And that's not even a scan, actually. That's a napkin sketch, literally a napkin sketch that I took a picture of with my iPhone, brought that into my computer, emailed it to myself. And I know, so if a T-Rex is about 40 feet long right here, that gives me a sense of what the scale is going to be. So I know this wall is probably right around 80 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in as 80 feet. And then I'm going to click over here, and it's going to keep the aspect ratio of this image. It's not going to stretch it. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And it's going to bring that right in. Now, once it's in, I can go ahead and select that image with a double click, and I can rescale it. I can do some things with it, but I know that scale, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I'm going to set that someplace right back here. So that was just a double click on the image, 1, 2, to activate it. And then it was just a simple displacement, a left click once and a left click twice to move it around. Let's go ahead and move it back to that original position. And let's go ahead and rotate this a little bit. So with it selected, I'm going to right click and select rotate off of my wheel. And then this is a compass. I'm going to place the compass right about here in the middle of my image. And then I'm just going to use this slider to drag it around. The idea being that as you come up this drive, we're going to see the T-Rex pavilion, this huge T-Rex head ready to bite your car as you're driving up to the Missouri Institute of Natural Science. Terror and dinosaurs go hand in hand. It's great fun. That's why all the kids love them. Okay, so I've got a base sketch, super rough, roughly to scale. I know once I begin really designing the building that I will further detail out what those dimensions are going to be exactly, verifying the right sizes, maximizing the potential. But for right now, this is good enough. I'm still at the programmatic phase. I'm still sort of in the building discovery mode. So I'm just going to take this little napkin sketch and I'm going to trace it out. Well, that seems a little bit off. Oh, that's because out to out on the image is going to be 80 feet. I want this back wall to be about 80 feet. So we do need to scale that up a little bit. That'll be pretty simple. Let's go ahead and select that. So that line right now is 60 feet. Let's add that. Let's draw that line one more time. Let's draw that line at 80 feet. And then we're going to scale this image up to match. So I'm going to move my line along in my direction that I want it to go. Rather than left clicking right away, I'm just going to click the tab button and say I want that line to be 80 feet. Enter. So the tab button immediately brings up that dimension tool. So you're not constantly sort of selecting and re-editing. I'm going to double click my image again. And this time I'm going to right click and select the scale tool. And I'm going to put my base point of my scale at the beginning of the line. My second point right about at the end of that wall. And my third point at the end of my line. Again, rough, but it's from a very rough sketch, so I'm totally fine with that. Cool. Okay, so let's continue on with my line work now. Let's bring this one this way. 40 feet seems about right. And notice I'm using that perpendicular, that purple perpendicular mode of thinking here. 20 feet seems good. 30 feet. Let's bring that in. 10. And now I'm going to use an inference. So I'm going to use the shift button to lock a perpendicular line. And I'm going to come to this edge right here. And that's going to give me a line perpendicular with the line I previously drew that comes to the end point of this line. So I can snap that together and make a building footprint. Cool. Takes a little bit of experimenting, but you'll get very good at those tools. They'll become second nature to you about 3 or 4 of these massing studies in. So now that I have this initial base geometry, I'm going to click on it. That's going to give me the opportunity to pull it up. So I'm going to left click once more on it and begin pulling that up. And again, I'm going to hit the tab key. And I know, again, T-Rex, about 20 feet tall. It's probably going to be on some type of stand, which is going to push it up another 4 or 5 feet. So I know the top of my building, yeah, it's going to be right about 40 feet probably. If I want to make everything nice and comfortable and exciting, 2 levels, upper viewing level, lower viewing level. So you can begin to see how this pavilion's coming together. And, you know, later on I might add on this other piece, this sort of second level piece that comes around. But for right now, I'm pretty happy with that. This is just, again, a simple massing study that I want to start putting together. Keep it simple, keep it together, okay? So I'm going to run a 30-year building simulation on this now. Because, again, I want to start getting some data. I want to know, is this the right spot? Is this the right orientation? What happens if I move the glass around on the surface. And all the kind of information can begin, um, it's something I can begin mining from Insight 360, which plays perfectly nice with FormIt. So what we're going to do next is we need to add a couple of layers to this. So I'm going to go to my Layers tab right down here. And I've got two levels right now. This is a 40-foot tall building, so we're actually going to change this to 20 feet and 0 feet. So level 1 is at 0 right here. Level 2 should split right down the middle. Now, I need to activate my levels on my object. So I'm going to select it, or alternatively, I can double click my geometry to make sure it's all selected. And I'm going to go to this object's properties right up here. And then I'm going to click Use Levels. Now you can see I've got level 1, level 2. This immediately also gives me my area by level. I'm at 8,100 square feet. Again, if you're working professionally early on in these sort of programmatic or design development strategy thinking sessions, having some of that data and seeing how this can come together is really useful. Not as useful to me as the next step. I think the next step is just absolutely amazing. Absolutely love where this is going in terms of simulation. So what we're going to do is click the energy analysis button. Well, let's do one more study first here. While we're inside of FormIt, let's take a quick look at solar analysis. So again, I've set a location, so I have my latitude and longitude. So I can be really precise in terms of my understanding with how the sun is going to work at any given date and any given time. So I know, the sun is just going to be the temperature is going to be absolutely terrible on this site in early August. And I know at 1 p.m., if this is a whole lot of glass right here, it is, not quite due south on the site, but I know I'm really going to need to do some work to make sure I'm protecting that elevation. It is not in any natural sort of shade at all. And I also know worst time of day really is like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And if you notice, I'm feeling really terrible about the idea of having any west glass at all on this design. Maybe if I did some really massive vertical louvers here, I might be able to block some of it. But it's this west facade that I'm already thinking, gosh, I need to change the orientation, or I need to plan that this is absolutely a solid wall, no glass at all, because it's just absolutely going to bake. Let's take a look at the solar analysis and see if that's going to confirm some of that as well. So again, the solar analysis tool is going to let me look at things at a specific month. In particular, it's using the month peak. I would recommend that if you're in a climate that's going to vary. If it's a more temperate climate, maybe you could do year cumulative. But for me, looking at it throughout the year is really pretty useless. The difference between August and December in Missouri is pretty drastic. So I'm really looking at this as a month peak kind of setting, which is the default. So I've got to already have all my geometry selected. It is something that you need to do. Make sure it's selected when you go into the solar analysis. I'm going to click Analyze. It's going to take just a second to run that. And I can see, the roof is 300 BTUs per square foot, which is a lot. The sides, both the south and the southeast and west, are all pretty high. Drops off a little bit. This red's just a little bit darker on this side. And again, I can hover my mouse over any given surface, and it's going to give me my month average as well. Now, again, you might not know a lot about working with BTUs just yet in your design career. This is information you're going to need to use as you go forward. And again, note this side that's facing a little more southerly, 127, it's pretty high. But even this west side, that's quite a bit higher, 156, 30 BTUs higher per square foot. And then the roof, 283.7. And again, that's looking at June. Let's bump that up to August. Sun's a little bit lower in the sky. It should change a little bit more. 150 on that west elevation, 159 on the southern elevation. So again, those values are going to change based on the time of year. And again, as I get a little bit further into my design, I can even start looking at December, or let's look at February. and that analysis is already automatically updated, because this is a time of year where, again, I actually want BTUs on my surface. I want to be able to capture that kind of energy and transmit it into my building and try and use that to passively heat. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn this back off. There we go, checkbox. And let's go ahead and send this to Insight. Generate insights. This is going to take a few minutes, probably less than a few minutes. It kind of depends on the time of day. And it depends a little bit on the complexity of your geometry and a few other things. But essentially, it is saving this project to the cloud. And Green Building Studio, I believe this is running with Green Building Studio as well. It's sort of a different interface to it. It is going to generate what is called an Insight 360 analysis of this early massing model. And so as it's doing that, with this Insight analysis, we're going to see sort of this interface that I don't want to compare it to Pinterest because that's kind of silly, but that's kind of the notion. We've got all these little different boxes pinned into place on my Insight 360 that's built for this massing model. And each little window or each pin has specific data on it that's going to give me the opportunity to modify that data, like the type of HVAC system, how much glazing is on each surface, and immediately see the impact that that's going to have on my design thinking, or actually on not just on the design thinking, but on the building performance itself. So all of that energy analysis is going to update real time while I'm sort of tinkering inside of these windows, which again is really powerful information to have early on in the design process. That is information that I can use in my programmatic level thinking, which is, to me, what we should all be doing as designers all the time. And it's data that we should be sharing with the client throughout the process as well, in terms of how we orient the building, how we work through different scenarios, where the glazing should be. Granted, all those things should be based off of building form and other modes of site analysis as well, but we absolutely need to be balancing that out with building performance in terms of energy analysis as well. So this should pop up here in just a second. Once this bar starts going, it usually is going really, really fast. Although apparently sometimes it decides to go in reverse too. It looked like it was almost done and went back to the beginning. There we go, starting to grow again. So again, let's just go back through this really, really quick, the steps that we've gone through so far. We're on to FormIt. First thing we did was grab a site. Next thing that I like to do is, again, I like to work viscerally, so I like pens and paper. So I had done a quick napkin sketch of how I thought the building might come together, how I was going to place my T-Rex inside of this pavilion. Grabbed that as an image, again, didn't send it through a scanner or anything that technical. I just used my phone, snapped a quick picture of it, imported that as a background image through the import tool right here. Set the scale of the image correctly. I had to do that twice in this particular case, but set the image. Built the massing model using the pen tool. Did a quick look at the solar analysis, both sun and shadow, and then British thermal units. And now we're wrapping up essentially what's going to be a 30-year building simulation on energy usage. And hopefully that's going to be done here in just a couple of seconds. Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep finding ways to kill some time here. Come on, FormIt. Come on, Insight. Perhaps when I finalize this YouTube video, I might go back and edit this part out. I don't know, we'll see. Work with me here in 3, 2, and a very long 1. All right, here we go. The energy analysis is complete. Update energy factors to improve performance and accuracy. So what I'm going to do now, back to this panel, and I'm going to click View Insight. So again, here is the thumbnail of my building that I'm currently working on. You can see it's made lots of assumptions for me. Certain percentage of windows on every face. So all of those things are now editable through these panels, which, let's just be honest, it's really, really cool. This is a remarkable interface, absolutely remarkable interface. So the first thing I want to start doing is looking at HVAC and determining which system is going to be the most efficient given this location and this sort of building configuration. Now, it's really easy to just start sliding these to the most efficient, but at the same time I can also say, you know, perhaps, just perhaps, I'm spending a lot of additional money for the gain. So all of these things right now as an academic are really, oh yeah, well, everything should be the most efficient. But in the real world, you're always balancing these out. What is the cost factor over the lifetime? But let's just get into looking at a few of these things. Lighting efficiency, you know, how many watts per square foot do we need? Probably we need to do a little bit of studies with museums and understand how much they are going to need. Let's look at some of the wall systems right here in terms of glazing. Well, let's look at the window glass first of all. You know, if I use triple glaze, low E glass, quite a bit of energy savings just in doing that. It's going to be more expensive. But if I have a lot of glass, I know that's going to pay off. Western walls, you know, that's an area, you know, the more I cut down in terms of the percentage of glazing, you can see that cost curve. And that's a pretty dramatic cost curve just for glass. So I know maybe I need to be peeling that down and reducing that number quite a bit. And again, you can see in this little ticker right here that it's getting closer to a target goal. And the goal, again, is cutting from the default energy consumption 60%, what a default building would be. You can also see it is updating that model in real time. There's that western wall, and you can see it's actually reduced the amount of glazing on this physical model, which is kind of cool. So, again, get into looking at these panels, what they do, understanding how we can work with those panels to change our upfront thinking of what the building is going to do and how it should perform. And that's sort of the core concept of FormIt and Insight 360, working as a team. We'll do a little bit more detail in working with FormIt on the next video, just a few of the more advanced modeling tools, adding some texture maps, and then also updating this as we make design decisions.